Why is taking your wife's last name as a man looked down upon?
My dad took my mom's last name in the 80s. His last name was Heine. I'm so grateful he made that choice. Growing up could have been rough.
In some cultures the man takes the woman's last name, if she's the last in her family to carry the name. Japanese do this.
Personally, I am of the opinion you should take the sickest last name regardless of gender. Whichever one sounds cooler, brah.
I had a friend whose husband chose to change his last name to his wife's last name, because he thought her last name was cooler. He didn't give a hoot about what people thought about it.
By our laws, nobody has to change their last name when they get married. It's totally up to you.
In Hispanic countries, couples never take the last name of their partners, and children inherit both last names.
Tradition is just peer pressure from dead people.
Am I the only one who's heard this and thought it was the dumbest thing and I have no idea why people think this way? No offense to any person in particular, but as a gay man, I have this thought for a lot of things about straight couples. My boyfriend and I have often expressed relief that we don't feel a pressure to act masculine or feminine because of the dynamics of our relationship. I don't see any reason to care at all what my friend's last name is. It's none of my business and it doesn't affect my life at all. If anything, I think it's logical for a straight man with a deadbeat dad to at least consider taking his wife's name. History, mostly. So, last names became popular in England when people needed to start moving around the country for work and survival, as opposed to fiefdom that kept them on the same land for generations. Didn't need a last name when you were the only John around. If there was two Johns, could be Big John or Little John. Or John the Thatcher, John the Smith. See where this is headed? It became a thing for passing down lineage and property. The name is how you knew the child was yours. And yes, at this time women were not in a place of power.
So, the men passed on their last names. Nowadays it's always been that way sort of thing. I am of the opinion you both should keep the last name, but create a new hybrid name by smashing the last two together. Smith plus Thatcher equals Smatcher or Thitherlol.
I took my wife's last name 11 years ago. My surname caused some issues for me and more for my sister growing up, but I never even thought about changing it till I was getting married. At that point me and my wife discussed it at length. She was more than happy to take my surname, but after discussing it at length we decided together I would take hers. I had a few people express their opinions on me taking her name, including a solicitor who tried to sabotage a house purchase because they had an outdated opinion. But I ignored everyone because frankly, who cares what other people think? With one exception, my grandmother, who was slightly upset as I am the last male in the family, but we spoke about it and she understood and gave me her blessing. Quite frankly, anyone who has an opinion on someone else's name isn't the sort of person I would want to respect me anyway.
Last names are a bit like area codes on phone numbers. The reasons why they were important in the past are less important now.
I know the history behind it, but it's dumb. If anything, lineage should follow the female, including last names. You always know the children are hers, but you don't necessarily know that they are the husband's.
My family is from Iran and they have a different custom than us. The wife keeps her last name after marriage, but the children take the father's last name. I personally do not mind if I were to get married and my wife chose to keep her last name. If we were to have kids, I'd prefer if they took my last name. If it were important to my wife, I'd be willing to hyphenate our children's last name, but I would prefer not to hyphenate my last name. I like my last name, but if I hated it, I would be willing to change it to my wife's last name. I had a friend growing up with the last name Dickman. She was excited to get married someday to change her last name. She ended up marrying a guy with the last name Wiener Lol. They got divorced and she's back to Dickman.
She just got engaged again though, and the guy doesn't have a penile reference in his last name, so her dream will finally come true, lol.
My cousin, who is a pediatrician, married a man with the last name Payne. He ended up taking our family name mostly so she wouldn't be Dr. Payne rolling on the floor laughing. For me personally, my biggest issue is with the guys saying, she can keep her name but the kids have mine. I cannot imagine carrying a fetus for 9 months and then letting anyone else put their name on it, to the exclusion of mine. I cannot comprehend why so many people, no matter the sex, is okay with giving up their surnames of 2030 years. Excluding cases of people that really hate the surnames for whatever reason. I am not married, but could very well be with a stable relationship and 2 kids. Before we met I had articles written. I had been a couple times in the news and won some competitions. I kind of find really bothersome to create a disconnect to that past me just because I married. Not to talk about chasing around embassies and offices to update passport, ID card, driving license, land registry. Hell no. My wife is from a Hispanic culture. She didn't take my last name. At first I was disappointed, but I understand now too. Keeping your own individual identity, etc. The kids in her culture have both parents' last names and so does she on her license. In the USA, she has to use her dad's last name, but in her country it's both names on license.
Patriarchal society.
Mostly because in these men's cultures, women are still seen as weak, inferior, and other. Little girls' toys are weak, and will taint boys if they play with them. Women's hobbies and interests are frivolous and silly. Traits that are associated with women are shameful, talkative, compassionate, nurturing, and taking a woman's name means you've been tainted by all that weakness and frivolity and shamefulness and have turned your back on the code that built the framework for everything familiar to you. That sounds super dramatic and overwrought when I write it all out. But yeah, old school, deeply ingrained sexism combined with the natural human desire to remain in the comfort zone of never questioning the source and validity of your beliefs and assumptions, whether they're liberal or conservative beliefs and assumptions.
Simply, it's an archaic view.
Because that's the way it's done, because that's the way we've always done it, so that's the way we'll do it, and anyone who deviates from that must be some kind of weirdo pervert. This is the reason for many things in life.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Haircast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.